Hello. So to continue this lecture on an introduction to small-scale mining, we're going to move on to the second part of some case studies. And so just to recap, in the first part of this lecture, what we covered was some basic information about artisanal and small-scale mining, that the numbers of miners are very large, over 40 million people directly employed, and hundreds of millions more indirectly supported in this livelihood, and that maybe 20% of global metals and minerals are produced by ASM, which includes 20% of gold, 20% of diamond, 80% of gemstones, and most construction materials, bricks, sand, clay, gypsum, limestone, etc. So we're going to do some case studies. The first one is going to be tantalum, which is one of the metals known within the three T's, or tin, tungsten, and tantalum. And this issue came to the fore maybe 15 years ago within the country of the DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo, in Central Africa. And tantalum is refined from coltan, tantalite, and columbite, and it often occurs within pegmatite veins, which also host tin and tungsten occasionally. And most of the world's coltan and tantalum comes from the DRC, and most, although nobody knows exactly, but maybe 80% comes from artisanal and small-scale mining, as photographed in the image here. And tantalum is important because it is a component found in all of our phones, which makes the vibration and stores electricity within capacitors. So all laptops, phones, everything electronic contains some tantalum. And there's uproar about human rights violations and conflict caused by the exploitation of these minerals. Several dozen different armed groups were alleged to be controlling mines or extracting tolls, and that was financing conflict in east and northern Kivu of the DRC. And in response to this, in 2010, or maybe it was 2011, it was finally ratified. The US passed a bill called the Dodd-Frank Act, which had a section which required any US company that was using tantalum in their supply chains. So this applied to Apple and Microsoft and Intel, all the electronics companies, to verify that it didn't cause conflict or lead to human rights abuses in the DRC. The problem was that all the manufacturers and electronics companies instantly put a de facto embargo on minerals from the DRC. And they said, well, that seems like a really thorny issue to go into such a complex remote area where we have no kind of idea and control over anything happening. So they just decided to get it elsewhere, which immediately put hundreds of thousands of people out of employment and risk causing even more impoverishment and hardship and potentially conflict. But there's been quite a response since then, which I'll talk about it. And in just recent few years, the EU has passed similar conflict minerals regulation, which essentially requires the same thing for many EU manufacturers and electronics companies. And so there's been several different responses, which I don't have time to discuss all in detail. So I'll just discuss the one that Pact has been involved with, which is called ITSCI, which is the Tin Supply Chain Initiative, which is in partnership with the International Tin Association, which is located in the UK. And it is a traceability and due diligence system for the DRC and neighboring countries, which are obliged to demonstrate that this mineral extraction isn't contributing to conflict within the region. And it's monitored by the UN Security Council and the OECD, and it's a very comprehensive approach to eliminating conflict from the supply chain. It's been active for about 8 years now, and it involves a team of maybe 30 or 40 staff going out and visiting about 400 or 500 mine sites every month. Within the whole system of small-scale mines, there's about 80,000 miners there, over 2,000 active sites, and collectively they produce about 20,000 tons a year of concentrate. And whilst the amount of tin and tungsten is not globally significant, more than half of the world's tantalum goes through this system of due diligence and traceability. And it involves these tags, which are photographed on the right here, being placed on every single bag of ore that comes out of a shaft or an adit, which has a code attached to it and is logged and recorded in that book, the tag ID number and the weight of the minerals. And as those minerals are processed or sold or upgraded, and transferred into a new bag of slightly less minerals as the waste is removed, a new tag gets applied, and so there's an entire chain of custody going back from the mine through to traders and processors and eventually exporters and smelters. And so the entire route of that mineral has been traced from the origin. And it relies on community members coming and reporting any allegations of tags being duplicated or people charging for tags or mislabeling or any inaccuracies are checked and double checked and reported and recorded. And the system is funded by an export levy so that it doesn't require any donor financing, which is a really amazing aspect of it in the development sector, that it's completely self-financing and sustainable. And it has been proven to be 100% in alignment with the due diligence guidance of the OECD. So essentially it has removed conflict from the 3T's supply chain. So any of the tin, tungsten, tantalum that you have in your phones and electronics, it does not contribute to conflict in the DRC. And there's a lot of reports to kind of discuss some of the ongoing issues, because things are constantly changing, but it's been successful, unlike any other kind of traceability and due diligence system currently on the market. And so here's just a few examples of what it looks like in the field. There's the tags being recorded by a government agent. So Pact assists in training government officials and miners and preparing everybody in the supply chain for the system. But the whole bagging and tagging of minerals and concentrates is done by government officials. And so on the top right, you see an image of a bag of probably concentrate, mixed kind of cassiterite, tantalite concentrate being weighed on a scale, and a bag will be attached with one of those tags, and the weight and the tag ID number will be recorded in that logbook. In the bottom left are a couple of Pact staff that are taking a dugout canoe, because many of these mines are so remote and are not accessible by roads. So people have to travel in very challenging conditions often to kind of ascertain that these mines are complying with the bagging and tagging. So another case study now on cobalt. Uh, Cobalt is very important as it's one of the uh, biggest commodities and ingredients of batteries. And so for the transition to green energy and electric vehicles, it's incredibly important in storing that power and allowing for electric vehicles to have larger ranges. The most powerful batteries have more cobalt in them, and most of the world's cobalt is found in the DRC as well. DRC is a really large country. It's a very poor country. There's some large-scale mining, but there's a huge amount, maybe 2 million artisanal miners. And it's very well endowed with some of the kind of key technology metals. So 60% of the world's cobalt is produced in the DRC, and a significant amount of this, maybe 20%, is produced by small-scale and artisanal miners. And Human Rights Watch and some other organizations that kind of report on humanitarian issues have written in-depth kind of stories about the role and involvement of children at these mine sites. And the main reason is because children don't have free education in DRC. They have to pay about $30 a month to have even a primary education. And being a poor country, these children take up some roles occasionally, oftentimes just temporary or part-time, and usually not the most strenuous ones. But they have been reported being involved in digging and washing and sorting or hauling minerals, some of the more arduous and hazardous. But any kind of child labor is considered by international health and labor standards as a worst form of child labor if they're involved in mining. So there's been reports that up to 40,000 children are active in these mines. And Pact has worked on this issue for over 10 years, trying to reduce and get rid of kind of children working in mines. And it requires a very nuanced approach. There's no one-size solution fits all. And again, I won't go into any details or read all this text, but one program that has been quite successful involved a lot of different interventions to reduce the presence of children in mines, including parental support for positive parent training, also support for schools and law enforcement agencies, and doing a lot of really creative things with communities around song and dance and transmitting messages and communicating in ways that people respond to. So there's been a real success in reducing the amount of child labor at these mines, almost 90% there over a couple of years project. And more recently, another project within the cobalt sector, which is quite an interesting one, is Mutoshi. And to give you some background, Mutoshi is a historic large-scale industrial mining operation that was shut down during low copper and cobalt prices kind of in the 80s or 90s. And kind of during that period that it was closed, a city of 30,000 people descended on this open pit mine. And as the mine pit flooded, the highest rich areas of ore were extracted by artisanal miners. And in the last 6 or 8 years, as the cobalt price has gotten very high, as well as copper, a mining company decided they were going to reopen it, pump out the open pit, and get trucks and shovels active again. But in doing so, they would risk having to kind of remove this city of 30,000 people on this Mutoshi mine site. And there's actually a place called Mutoshi City. There was 10,000 workers on the concession, and Trafigura, which is like Glencore, it's one of the biggest commodities traders in the world, um, said they would not allow 30,000 people to just be displaced and moved. So that's a large mine. The risk of human rights abuses um, and kind of the potential conflict of that was too great. They demanded that some other solution be found. And so what occurred over almost 2 years was that Pact was implementing a responsible artisanal and small-scale mining project on the concession, but at a large scale. So there was thousands of ASMs, artisanal miners working with ID cards, had gone through safety training. They were allowed to mine up to a given depth and no further because of geotechnical risks and hazards from falling or falls of ground and landslides. And they produced a significant amount of cobalt in this part of the Congo. And there's been a few studies to kind of review the success and progress of that. And you can follow the link on the bottom there and watch a short kind of 5-minute video about this pilot. And you can see an image there of kind of these different shafts that different groups of miners are allowed to dig on. And there's support. It's like a quasi large-scale mining and artisanal mining operation in that the miners are allowed to dig a few meters, and after that heavy equipment is brought in to clear out remaining overburden and interburden, and then the miners then progress to the next level of ore. It reduces dilution, because miners are actually looking at centimeter scale whether there's copper and cobalt mineralization or not, and it reduces a lot of waste, so grade control is much better. And it's been very successful, not only and kind of maintaining a kind of a peaceful relationship between the mining company and the community, but in delivering a large amount of cobalt at competitive prices and doing so safely and in an organized way. And so we've talked about tin, tungsten, tantalum a little bit, and cobalt. And ASM is very significant in other technology metals. Those are a couple of stats to indicate how much those metals share in the ASM global production. And just another couple images from tin. Indonesia being one of the biggest suppliers of tin, where most of the mines are alluvial in nature, and they pump up using powerful suction dredges, so giant hoovers sucking up gravel that contains cassiterite in these large alluvial systems, and use very simple gravity methods through a sluice box to concentrate the tin and send it off to smelters. Rare earths, which are also very big in the media because of the importance of them in everything from telecommunications and electronics to fighter jets and laser beams and high-speed internet. The rare earths are mostly produced in China, maybe 90%, and a large production of those are also produced by artisanal mining methods. The mines in China are particularly challenging because of the metal and radioactive content of ASM and the quite kind of poor environmental controls that some of the mines have. And one project in particular that's interesting within the UK, because there is a UK publicly listed company called Rainbow Rare Earths, which is developing the only kind of active source of rare earths in Africa. There's only a couple of mines outside of China that produce rare earths, and this one is in Burundi, which is a very, very small country kind of sandwiched between the DRC and Rwanda in Central Africa. And it is a kind of large there's a large kind of footprint of rare earth mineralization across this terrain. But it's essentially an artisanal mining operation. There's like a limited amount of mechanization you can see with the backhoe there, but essentially they're trying to develop a small scale responsible rare earth mine that is outside of China that can deliver these very critical technology metals to kind of the UK and US and European customers. So the third case study is going to be around gemstones. And as I said, gemstones are 80% produced by ASM. Um, Gemstones are very difficult to delineate. Kind of next to diamonds and alluvial gold, they're very challenging deposits to explore and develop. And so, yeah, many gemstone come from parts of Sri Lanka or Thailand or Madagascar, and yeah, the big three, rubies, sapphires, and emeralds, mainly come from ASM. And I'm just going to talk about one project which Pact has been working on the last couple of years, called Moyo Gems. And Moyo Gems is the world's first kind of fully transparent gemstone artisanal supply chain from mine to market. It was launched in May of 2019 and involves these groups of women miners from an ASM cooperative in Tanzania. So these are gemstone miners. They're old, they're young, they're experienced, they're new, and they mine these deposits underground, and the whole system is traced and tracked from the mine to the market, through the cutting and polishing to the jeweler who places it in a necklace or a ring, to assure that the minerals were produced and bought and sold in an ethical, transparent way, benefit people. And it initially started off with a project working with the GIA, which is the Gemological Institute of America, who wanted to help these female gemstone miners in Tanzania. And so, kind of with Pact's support, developed a guide written in Swahili, but mainly kind of pictorial, a very easy, user-friendly guide to help women miners evaluate the value of their gems. So you can see some images of rough stones pulled out of underground mines there in their hand, and these were just being sold for whatever they could fetch on the open market price. And because the miners didn't know the value of them, yeah, they were getting kind of undercut. So the guide and the training helped women prepare their gems for sale and to help them understand what was valuable features, you know, the clarity and the color of the gemstones, and help them segment different stones into different parcels so that could fetch a higher value and have more negotiating power. And it was so successful that some jewelers were excited about it, and started this program of yeah, purchasing with the kind of existing traders and exporters in the system, to ensure that miners got paid a better price, so could, you know, improve livelihoods, and also, you know, have a way of connecting consumers with these stones and the women who mined it. And so to date, there's been yeah, a large and growing volume of stones sold, and it's been yeah, very successful, and it's garnered a lot of attention amongst the jewelry sector. And unlike some other programs that kind of cut out the middlemen, this program has made sure that all the different people within the kind of supply chain in Tanzania originally, the traders and the dealers and the different negotiations, still had a role to play, but all the transactions were negotiated, and a fair price was given to brokers, and a better value given to miners. And the downstream purchasers, the gemstone cutters and wholesalers and jewelers, were more than happy to kind of pay, a slight market premium. And yeah, you can kind of search for Moyo Gems online and see more information about that. And yeah, that concludes the final case study before gold, which will be the last one.